The desert wind carried dust and desperation through the streets of Redemption Creek as Eleanor Walsh pressed herself against the weathered wall of the general store. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the silver locket, her mother's last gift, considering whether to trade it for bread. 3 days without food had left her hollow, and the bruises on her wrists from Sheriff Dalton's grip were turning yellow at the edges. "Running won't save you, Eleanor," the sheriff had said that morning, his breath reeking of whiskey. "You're mine by law now that your father's dead. Wedding's in 2 days. Before anyone could truly help her, I'd like to take a moment to ask you something important. If you're enjoying this story, please take a second to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. It truly motivates us to bring you more quality content like this. I'm curious, where are you listening from today? Let me know in the comments. Now, Eleanor watched the sun sink behind the mountains, painting the sky the color of blood and gold. She had no plan beyond surviving the night. The locket felt heavy in her palm. 20 years of her mother's love reduced to a bargaining chip. "That won't buy you much." The voice came from behind her, deep and certain. Eleanor spun, her heart hammering, and found herself staring up at a man who seemed carved from the landscape itself. He stood well over 6 feet, with shoulders broad enough to block the setting sun. Dark hair fell past his collar, and his eyes, storm gray and intense, held something she hadn't seen in months. Concern without possession. I wasn't," she started. "You were about to trade something precious for something temporary." He stepped closer, and she noticed the way he moved, careful and deliberate, like he was approaching a wounded animal. "I'm Cade Morrow. I own the ranch 5 miles north." He nodded toward her hidden hand. "Keep your locket. What you need is work, not charity." Eleanor's pride warred with her hunger. "I don't need." Her stomach betrayed her with a vicious growl. Cade's expression didn't change, but something softened in those gray eyes. "My cook left last month to get married. Haven't had a decent meal since." He turned slightly, giving her space to decide, without his full attention bearing down on her. "Pays fair. Room in the main house. No obligations beyond honest work." "Why would you help me?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Cade looked back at her then, really looked, and Eleanor felt seen for the first time since her father died. "Because you're standing here trying to survive with dignity, and that's worth more than gold." He paused. "And because I know what it's like to have nowhere safe to go." The ride to Morrow Ranch revealed more about the man than words could. Cade had given her his horse, a beautiful paint mare named Sage, while he walked alongside, leading them through the desert twilight. He didn't press her with questions, didn't demand her story in exchange for his help. When they passed close to town, and Eleanor instinctively ducked her head, Cade simply shifted his position to block her from view of the main road. The ranch emerged from the darkness like a promise. The sturdy house of wood and stone, corrals with strong fencing, and in the distance, cattle grazing under the emerging stars. It wasn't grand, but it was solid, built by hands that understood the difference between shelter and home. "That's the bunkhouse," Cade said, pointing to a low building where lamplight glowed in windows. "4 ranch hands, good men. They'll respect your space." He led her toward the main house. "Your room's upstairs, faces east, so you'll get morning sun. Lock on the door." That detail, the lock, made Eleanor's throat tight. He understood without her having to explain. Inside, the house smelled of wood smoke and leather. Cade lit lamps, revealing a front room that was sparse but clean, with a stone fireplace and furniture that had been built for durability, not show. Through a doorway, she could see the kitchen. "I'll make something quick," Eleanor said, moving toward it automatically. "Tomorrow." Cade's hand on her arm stopped her, gentle but firm. She flinched before she could stop herself, and his hand dropped immediately. "Sorry, I should have. Tomorrow's soon enough. Tonight you eat what I make, and you rest." He prepared a simple meal: beans, cornbread, and strips of salted beef. But to Eleanor, it might as well have been a feast. She ate slowly, trying to maintain some dignity, while Cade busied himself at the stove, giving her privacy in the only way that mattered. "The sheriff," she said finally, between bites. "He'll come looking." "Let him." Cade's voice was flat, final. He set a cup of coffee in front of her. "Dalton's got no claim here. This is my land, and you're under my protection." "You don't understand. He says the law gives him—" "The law gives him nothing." Cade sat across from her, his massive frame making the sturdy chair look small. "Your father's debts died with him. Dalton's trying to trick you into thinking otherwise." He held her gaze. "I've dealt with men like him before. He's a coward who uses a badge to hide behind." Eleanor wanted to believe him. She wanted it so desperately it scared her. "Why are you doing this?" Cade was quiet for a long moment, his fingers wrapped around his own coffee cup. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old pain. 3 years ago, my sister ran from a man who claimed ownership of her. She didn't make it to safety." His jaw tightened. "I see her every time I look at someone who needs help and isn't getting it, so I do what I can." The words settled between them like a vow. That night, in a room with clean sheets and a door that locked, Eleanor cried for the first time since her father's death. Not from fear or grief, but from the overwhelming relief of being, for one night at least, safe. Morning came with the sound of roosters and the smell of coffee. Eleanor woke disoriented, reaching instinctively for the knife she'd hidden under her pillow in Sheriff Dalton's jail cell, before remembering where she was. Sunlight streamed through the window, and for a moment, she let herself simply lie there, warm and rested. Downstairs, she found Cade already working, repairing a saddle at the kitchen table. He looked up when she entered, and Eleanor noticed details she'd missed in last night's darkness. The scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the calluses on his hands that spoke of years of hard labor, the way his shirt strained across his chest and shoulders. "Coffee's hot," he said. "Take your time. Ranch hands eat at dawn, but you're not on their schedule." Eleanor poured herself a cup and started examining the kitchen properly. It was well stocked, but chaotic, the domain of someone who cooked for fuel, not pleasure. She could work with this. "I'll start with breakfast," she said. "Then I'll need to know what supplies you have and what needs ordering." Cade's hands stilled on the saddle. "You don't have to prove anything today." "I'm not proving anything. I'm earning my keep." She met his eyes steadily. "I don't take charity, Mr. Morrow." Something like respect flickered across his face. Cade, just Cade. He returned to his work. "There's bacon in the cold cellar, eggs in the hen house. Hans'll be back in around mid-morning, hungry enough to eat leather." Eleanor set to work, and for the first time in months, her hands were steady. She made flapjacks with wild honey, bacon cooked crispy, and eggs scrambled with herbs she found growing in pots by the window. The simple act of creation, of making something good, loosened something tight in her chest. When the ranch hands came in, 4 sun-weathered men who introduced themselves as Tommy, Red, Jose, and old Pete. They stared at the laden table, like men seeing a mirage. "Ma'am," Red said, his voice reverent, "if you're real and not some vision, I might just weep." "She's real," Cade said from the doorway, his tone carrying a warning. "And she's to be treated with respect. Anyone has a problem with that can collect their pay and ride out." The men nodded quickly, and Eleanor felt a flutter of something warm in her stomach at Cade's protectiveness. It wasn't possessive, it was protective. There was a difference. Over the next 2 weeks, Eleanor settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She cooked 3 meals a day, kept the house in order, and slowly, carefully, began to reclaim pieces of herself she'd thought Sheriff Dalton had destroyed. Cade was always near, not hovering, but present. He fixed the squeaky hinge on her bedroom door without being asked. He brought her wildflowers and left them on the kitchen table with no explanation. He taught her to shoot his rifle, standing behind her to adjust her stance, his hands careful and respectful on her shoulders. "Breathe out slow," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "Squeeze, don't pull." The rifle cracked, and the bottle on the fence post exploded. Eleanor whooped in delight, spinning toward him, and found herself inches from his chest. Cade's hands came up automatically to steady her, and for a moment, they stood frozen. "You're a natural," he said softly, his gray eyes dark and intense. Eleanor's heart hammered. "I had a good teacher." His thumb brushed her cheek, so gently she might have imagined it. Then he stepped back, putting proper distance between them. "Again, you need to be able to protect yourself." But Eleanor was beginning to realize the greatest danger she faced wasn't Sheriff Dalton. It was the way her heart jumped every time Cade walked into a room. The way she found excuses to touch his hand when passing him coffee. The way she watched him work, mesmerized by the play of muscles under sun-darkened skin. She was falling for him, and that terrified her more than any lawman. The confrontation came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks into Eleanor's stay. She was in the garden, harvesting vegetables for the day's meals, when the sound of hoofbeats made her freeze. 6 horses. She recognized the lead rider before she even looked up. Sheriff Dalton sat tall in his saddle, his badge catching the sunlight. 5 deputies flanked him, all armed. "There you are, Eleanor. Been looking for you." Eleanor straightened slowly, her hand sliding toward the knife, tucked into her belt, one of Cade's, sharp and balanced. "I have nothing to say to you, Sheriff." "That's where you're wrong, girl. You got plenty to say, starting with an apology for running off, making me look foolish." Dalton's smile was all cruelty. "Now come on, we got a wedding to plan." "She's not going anywhere with you." Cade appeared from the barn, and Eleanor's breath caught. He wore his gun belt, the Colt sitting easy on his hip, and he moved with the loose-limbed confidence of a man who knew exactly what he was capable of. The ranch hands materialized from various corners of the property, spreading out in a loose semicircle, all armed. Dalton's smile thinned. "This isn't your concern, Morrow. The girl's mine by right of her father's debt." "Show me the legal paperwork." Cade's voice was flat, dangerous. "Not your made-up claims. Real documents." The sheriff's face reddened. "I don't need to show you anything. I'm the law here." "You're a bully with a badge." Cade moved closer, putting himself between Eleanor and the mounted men. "And your authority ends at my property line. Eleanor Walsh is under my protection. You want her, you'll have to go through me." The deputy shifted uncomfortably. Taking on one man was simple enough. Taking on Cade Morrow with 4 armed ranch hands backing him, on his own land, that was something else entirely. "You're making a mistake," Dalton said, his hand drifting toward his gun. "The only mistake here is yours." Cade's hand hung loose by his Colt, ready. "You rode onto my property to intimidate a woman? That makes you the criminal, not me. Now you've got 2 choices. Ride out peaceful, or find out exactly why folks don't cross me." The silence stretched tight as a bowstring. Eleanor could barely breathe, watching Cade face down 6 armed men without flinching. This was a different side of him. Not the gentle protector who left her wildflowers, but the dangerous man who'd survived years in the untamed West. Finally, Dalton yanked his horse's head around. "This isn't over. Law's on my side." "Then get a warrant," Cade called after him. "Come back with real legal standing and we'll talk. Until then, stay off my land." They watched the riders disappear in a cloud of dust. Eleanor's legs suddenly felt weak, and she stumbled. Cade turned, catching her before she fell. "I've got you," he said, his arms strong and sure around her. "You're safe." "He won't stop," Eleanor's voice shook. "He'll come back with more men. He'll burn your ranch. Then let him try." Cade tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Eleanor, listen to me. I meant what I said. You're under my protection, and I don't make promises I can't keep." His thumb traced her jaw, achingly gentle. "I've faced worse than a corrupt sheriff. He doesn't scare me." "Why?" the word burst out of her. "Why risk everything for me?" Cade's expression softened, and something fierce and tender blazed in his gray eyes. "Because somewhere along the way, protecting you stopped being about my sister and started being about you. Because you make my coffee just the way I like it without asking. Because you sing when you think no one's listening. Because when you smile, really smile, it feels like sunrise." He drew a shaky breath. "Because I'm falling in love with you, Eleanor Walsh, and I'll be damned if I let anyone hurt you ever again." Eleanor's world tilted. She reached up, her fingers trembling as they traced the scar through his eyebrow. "I'm broken," she whispered. "What Dalton did, what my father allowed. I'm not whole." "Then be broken." Cade's hands cradled her face like she was something precious. "Be broken and angry and scared. Be all of it. You're still the strongest person I know." "I feel like I'll break," she said, the truth spilling out. "Every time you touch me, every time you look at me like I matter, I feel like I'll shatter from how much I want this, want you. But I'm terrified." "Then break with me," Cade said roughly, his forehead touching hers. "We'll break together and build something new. The sheriff will never suspect a thing. That what started as protection became this." His lips brushed hers, feather soft. "Let me love you, Eleanor. Let me show you what you deserve." The kiss started gentle, almost tentative, as if Cade feared she'd bolt. But Eleanor had spent months running, and she was done. She pressed closer, her hands fisting in his shirt, and kissed him back with all the desperate hunger of a woman who'd finally found home. Cade groaned against her mouth, his arms tightening, lifting her off her feet. The kiss deepened, turned fierce and claiming. Eleanor felt the last of her walls crack open, and instead of fear, there was only relief, only want. Only this man who'd looked at her and seen someone worth saving. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cade rested his forehead against hers. "We're gonna do this right," he said, his voice rough. "I'm gonna court you proper, dance with you, marry you if you'll have me. But Eleanor," his eyes burned into hers, "you need to know what you're getting. I'm not a gentle man. I've killed. I've done things I'm not proud of. The West makes you hard, and I'm no exception. I don't need gentle. Eleanor cupped his scarred face. I need real. I need you. The smile that spread across Cade's face was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. Then you've got me, all of me, for as long as you'll have me. The next 3 weeks were a strange, sweet torture. Cade courted her with the same intensity he brought to everything, leaving love notes in her recipe book, teaching her to ride so they could explore the ranch together, sitting with her on the porch in the evenings, talking until the stars came out. But he also kept his distance, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. The most they shared were stolen kisses in the barn, heated glances across the dinner table, and the constant, aching awareness of each other. It was old Pete who finally said what everyone was thinking. Boss, I mean this with all respect, but if you don't marry that woman soon, the rest of us are gonna lose our minds watching you two dance around each other. Cade, who'd been shoeing a horse, looked up with a grin. Working on it, Pete. But before Cade could make his move, Sheriff Dalton made his. They came at dawn, while the ranch was just waking. A dozen men, all deputized, all armed. This time, Dalton had brought paperwork. Got me a warrant, the sheriff called from his horse. Says Eleanor Walsh is wanted for questioning in her father's death. Funny how he died so sudden, isn't it? And her running off right after? Eleanor felt the blood drain from her face. Her father had died of a heart attack. She'd been there, had watched him clutch his chest and fall. But she had no proof. And in a territory where the law was whatever the man with the badge said it was. That's a lie. Cade appeared at her side, his hand finding hers. You're manufacturing charges because you can't have her any other way. That's for a judge to decide. Dalton's smile was triumphant. Now, Eleanor, you can come peaceful, or we can make this ugly. Your choice. The hell she will. Cade's voice went deadly quiet. You want her, you'll have to take her from my corpse. The deputies spread out, hands on their guns. This wasn't a standoff they could win with words. Cade's ranch hands appeared, armed and ready, but they were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Cade, don't. Eleanor gripped his arm. There's too many. They'll kill you. Then they'll kill me. He looked down at her, and his eyes were fierce with love. I told you, I don't make promises I can't keep. You're mine to protect, and I'll die before I let him take you. Listen to your woman, Morrow, Dalton said. Be smart. Hand her over and nobody has to bleed today. Eleanor's mind raced. If she went with Dalton, Cade would come after her, and he'd die trying to save her. But if she didn't go, the sheriff would turn this ranch into a battlefield. Either way, the man she loved would be destroyed. Unless she gave Dalton what he really wanted, an end to his humiliation. I'll go, Eleanor said clearly. She felt Cade tense beside her. On one condition. This isn't about my father's death. We all know he died of natural causes. This is about your pride, Sheriff. So here's the deal. I'll go with you right now if you agree that once I'm cleared of these false charges, as we both know I will be, I never have to see you again. You'll leave me and Mr. Morrow alone. Dalton's eyes gleamed. You'll come peaceful? No trouble? No trouble. Eleanor pulled away from Cade, ignoring his sharp intake of breath. But if you go back on your word, Sheriff, every person here today is a witness. You won't just be corrupt. You'll be a known liar. Think that'll help your re-election? The sheriff considered, then nodded slowly. Deal, long as you come quiet. Eleanor, no. Cade grabbed her arm. I won't let you. She turned to him, putting her hand on his cheek. Trust me, she whispered. low enough that only he could hear. "I'm not running anymore. I'm giving us time." She kissed him quickly. "I love you. Remember that." Before he could respond, Eleanor walked toward the waiting horses, her head high. She was done being a victim, done being afraid. If Cade had taught her anything, it was that strength came from standing up, not running away. Dalton hauled her onto his horse with rough hands, and Eleanor allowed it, storing every bruising grip as evidence. The ranch hands watched, grim-faced, as the posse rode out. Eleanor looked back once and met Cade's eyes across the distance. He stood frozen, his hands clenched into fists, every muscle rigid with the effort of not charging after her. But there was something else in his expression. Understanding. He knew she had a plan. She just hoped it would work. The jail in Redemption Creek was exactly as Eleanor remembered. Cold stone, iron bars, and the smell of unwashed bodies and despair. Dalton threw her into a cell and locked it with a triumphant smile. "Comfortable?" He leaned against the bars. "Don't worry. Judge'll be here in 3 days. Then we'll have ourselves a nice, quiet wedding, legal and binding. The charges will disappear the moment you say I do." Dalton's smile was all teeth. "That was always the play, darling. Can't have what I want legally. I'll get it another way." Eleanor forced herself to stay calm. "And when Cade comes for me?" "Oh, I'm counting on it." The sheriff's eyes gleamed. "Man who assaults a lawman attempting a legal arrest? That's a hanging offense. He comes charging in here, and I've got all the justification I need to put him down. It's perfect, really." Cold fear washed through Eleanor, but she kept her face blank. "You've thought this through." "I'm not stupid, Eleanor. Just patient." Dalton walked away, whistling. Eleanor sat on the thin cot and forced herself to think. Cade would come for her, that was certain. But he was smart. He wouldn't charge in blind. He'd make a plan. She just had to trust him and be ready. The first day passed with agonizing slowness. Eleanor was given water and stale bread, and she made herself eat it, knowing she'd need her strength. The second day, one of the deputies, a young man named Billy who looked uncomfortable with the whole situation, brought her real food. "Ma'am," he said quietly, setting the plate down, "I want you to know, some of us don't think this is right. Sheriff's, well, he's not acting lawful." Eleanor looked up sharply. "Then help me." Billy shifted nervously. "Can't go against the sheriff directly, but—" He glanced around, then leaned closer. "Mr. Morrow sent word. There's a lawyer coming from Silver City. Real one, not the drunk we got here. Sheriff doesn't know yet." Hope flickered. "When?" "Tomorrow morning. You just gotta hold on, ma'am." After Billy left, Eleanor allowed herself to breathe again. Cade wasn't charging in with guns blazing. He was being smart, using the law against the lawman. It was perfect. But Dalton wasn't stupid either. The next morning, before the lawyer could arrive, the sheriff appeared at her cell with a bottle of whiskey and a crooked smile. "Change of plans," he announced. "Judge got delayed. But we got a preacher in town, and I got a marriage license right here." He waved a paper. "So we're gonna make this official, right now." "I won't. You will, or I'll have my deputies ride out to Morrow Ranch and burn it to the ground with everyone in it." Dalton's voice went flat. "I'm done playing, Eleanor. You're mine, one way or another." Eleanor felt the walls closing in. He had her. If she refused, Cade and the ranch hands would die. If she agreed, Cade would storm the jail and get himself killed. Either way, she lost. Unless she could stall long enough for the lawyer to arrive. "I need time to prepare," she said, thinking fast. A woman should look presentable for her wedding. Let me clean up, fix my hair. Give me that much, at least. Dalton studied her suspiciously, then shrugged. 1 hour, but if you try anything, I'll make you sorry. After he left, Eleanor worked quickly. She had no plan for escape. The cell was solid, the window too small. But she could make noise. She could cause a scene. She could make this wedding so public and so obviously forced that even Dalton's bought and paid for supporters would have to acknowledge what he was doing. 50 minutes later, Billy appeared again. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. Sheriff says it's time." Eleanor stood, smoothing her dirty dress. "Billy, you know this is wrong." The young deputy's face twisted. "I know, but I got a family to think about. And you think they'll be proud when they learn you helped force a woman into marriage?" Eleanor stepped closer to the bars. "You think your daughter will be safe in a town where the sheriff can do whatever he wants to women?" Billy's hand shook on his gun belt. I can't." Eleanor held his gaze. "When the lawyer gets here, you tell him everything. You make sure the truth comes out." "That's all I'm asking." Billy swallowed hard, then nodded once before unlocking the cell. Dalton had assembled a small crowd in front of the jail, mostly his supporters, but enough regular townsfolk that word would spread. The preacher looked uncomfortable, but determined. Eleanor was walked to stand beside the sheriff, her skin crawling at his proximity. "Dearly beloved," the preacher began. Eleanor opened her mouth to object, to scream, to do anything that would stop this. The sound of hoofbeats cut through the morning air. A single rider, moving fast, driving a horse straight down the main street. Eleanor's heart leaped as she recognized the paint mare. Sage, which meant Cade Morrow pulled the horse to a rearing stop in front of the assembly, dust flying. But he wasn't alone. Behind him came another horse, ridden by a man in a fine suit, carrying a leather satchel. And behind them, a woman in traveling clothes, the lawyer, and a witness. "Stop this wedding," Cade commanded, his voice carrying across the square. He dismounted in one smooth motion, his hand resting on his Colt. "You're marrying a woman under false pretenses, Dalton." The sheriff's face went red. "This is a legal proceeding, Morrow. You're interrupting." "A farce." The suited man stepped forward. "I'm Jefferson Hayes, attorney from Silver City. I have here a sworn statement from Dr. Reeves." He held up papers, testifying that John Walsh died of natural causes, heart failure, witnessed by 3 people. Miss Walsh had nothing to do with his death. Dalton's confidence flickered. "That don't matter. She still—" "Furthermore," Hayes continued, his voice cutting, "I have testimony from 5 citizens of this town." He gestured to the woman behind him, including Mrs. Martha Hendricks, the mayor's wife, stating that you, Sheriff Dalton, have been extorting Miss Walsh with false promises of debt forgiveness in exchange for marriage, that you have unlawfully detained her, that you have abused your authority. The crowd murmured. This was more than Dalton could simply sweep under the rug. "She came willingly," Dalton protested. "Under duress." Cade stepped forward, and Eleanor's breath caught at the cold fury in his eyes. "You threatened to harm her if she didn't cooperate. You manufactured charges. You've committed at least 6 crimes, Dalton. The only question now is whether you're going to hang for them." The sheriff's hand moved toward his gun, and instantly, every ranch hand Cade had brought materialized from the crowd, all armed. Dalton froze, realizing he was outgunned and outmaneuvered. "You've got a choice," Hayes said calmly. "Release Miss Walsh immediately, resign your position, and leave this county. or face trial for kidnapping, extortion, and abuse of power. I promise you, the territorial governor is very interested in your activities." For a long moment, Dalton stood frozen, his face purple with rage. Then, slowly, his hand dropped from his gun. "This isn't over." "Yes," Cade said quietly, dangerously. "It is. Touch her again. Threaten her again. Even look at her wrong, and legal consequences will be the least of your worries. I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth. Do you understand me?" Dalton saw something in Cade's eyes that made him step back. He ripped the badge from his chest and threw it in the dirt. "She's not worth this much trouble." "She's worth everything," Cade corrected. He moved to Eleanor, gently taking her arm. "Let's go home." Eleanor's legs felt weak as Cade guided her to his horse. He lifted her into the saddle with easy strength, then mounted behind her, his arms coming around her, solid and safe. As they rode out of town, Eleanor let herself lean back against his chest, feeling his heart beating steady against her back. "You came," she whispered. "Always." Cade's arms tightened. "Did you really think I wouldn't? You could have been killed. So could you." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "We're done playing it safe, Eleanor. Done letting fear make our choices. From now on, we do this together." Eleanor twisted in the saddle to look at him. "Together?" "Together," Cade confirmed, his gray eyes soft with love. "If you'll have me, marry me, Eleanor Walsh. Not because you need protection, or because I need a cook. Marry me, because I love you so much, it terrifies me. Because you make me want to be better. Because I can't imagine a single day without you." Tears spilled down Eleanor's cheeks. "I feel like I'll break," she said again. The words they'd spoken once before. "Every time you say things like that, I feel like my heart will burst." "Then break with me," Cade said, echoing his earlier promise. "We'll break and heal and break again. That's what loving someone means." He cradled her face. "So what do you say? Will you marry me?" Eleanor kissed him, pouring every ounce of love and hope and fierce joy into it. "Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes." The ride back to the ranch felt like flying. When they arrived, the ranch hands were waiting, and they erupted into cheers at the news. Old Pete brought out his fiddle, Red produced a harmonica, and spontaneous celebration broke out in the yard. Cade pulled Eleanor aside, away from the noise. "We can wait," he said, his voice rough. "Take our time. Do this proper." Eleanor looked up at him, this hard, dangerous, impossibly gentle man who'd saved her in every way that mattered. "I'm done waiting. I've spent too much of my life afraid, hiding. I want to live, Cade, with you." Something fierce blazed in his eyes. "Eleanor, make me yours," she said, her hands fisting in his shirt. "Tonight, now, I choose you. I choose this." Cade's control snapped. He swept her into his arms, carrying her toward the house, while the ranch hands whistled and cheered behind them. He kicked the door shut, blocking out the world, and set her down gently in his bedroom, the room that would now be theirs. "You're sure?" he asked, his hands framing her face. "Because once we do this, you're mine, completely. I'm already yours." Eleanor started unbuttoning his shirt, her fingers trembling but determined. "Show me, Cade. Show me what it's like when someone loves you right." What followed was tender and fierce, clumsy and perfect. Cade took his time, whispering promises against her skin, showing her with every touch that she was precious. When Eleanor gasped at a moment of pain, Cade immediately stilled. Go slow, she breathed. It hurts. I'll die before I hurt you, Cade swore, his forehead pressed to hers. We stop whenever you want. You're in control, Eleanor. Always. But Eleanor didn't want to stop. She pulled him closer, giving herself to him completely. And Cade loved her, like she was the only thing that mattered in the world. And when they finally lay tangled together, breathless and whole, Eleanor understood what it meant to be truly free. I love you, she whispered against his chest. Cade's arms tightened around her. I love you more than I knew I could love anything. You're my heart, Eleanor, my home. They married properly 2 weeks later, in a simple ceremony on the ranch with the people they loved around them. Eleanor wore a dress the color of sage, made by Martha Hendricks, who'd become a friend, and wildflowers in her hair. Cade wore his best shirt and couldn't stop smiling. When the preacher asked if anyone objected, old Pete called out, "About damn time," and everyone laughed. Cade's kiss was thorough enough to make Eleanor blush and the ranch hands hoot. He lifted her hand, showing off the simple gold band he'd placed there. Mine, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Ours, Eleanor corrected, smiling up at him. Ours, Cade agreed, and kissed her again. 5 years later, Eleanor Morrow stood on the porch of their expanded ranch house, watching her husband teach their 3-year-old daughter to ride. Sage, the mare that had carried her to safety all those years ago, was patient with the little girl's clumsy attempts. "Mama," the girl called, "watch me." "I'm watching, sweetheart," Eleanor called back, one hand resting on her rounded belly. Another baby was coming in the spring. Cade caught her eye from across the yard and smiled, that same fierce, tender smile that still made her heart skip. He'd kept every promise. They'd built a life together, breaking and healing and growing stronger with each season. Eleanor touched the silver locket at her throat, her mother's locket, which she'd never had to sell. Inside now was a picture of her family, Cade, their daughter, and soon their second child. She'd been so close to losing everything, but instead, she'd found everything that mattered. "What are you thinking about?" Cade asked, coming up the porch steps and pulling her into his arms. Eleanor leaned back against his chest, just as she had that first ride home. "About breaking," she said softly, "and healing, and how grateful I am that you wouldn't let me face it alone." Cade pressed a kiss to her neck. "Together," he murmured, "always together." And Eleanor, who once thought she'd never be safe again, smiled, because she was home. Finally, completely home. The cattle drive came unexpectedly that autumn, 6 years into their marriage. Cade had built the ranch into one of the most prosperous in the territory, but success brought its own challenges. A buyer in Dodge City was offering top dollar, but only if they could deliver 500 head of cattle within the month. "It's 3 weeks on the trail," Cade said that evening, studying the maps spread across their kitchen table. "Maybe 4 if we hit bad weather." Eleanor stood behind him, her hands on his shoulders. Their daughter, Rose, was asleep upstairs, and their son, Samuel, was tucked in the cradle by the fire. The house was peaceful, warm, everything she'd never dared dream of having. "You're going," she said. It wasn't a question. Cade reached up, covering her hand with his. "I don't want to leave you, not for that long, but this sale could set us up for years." Eleanor had learned the business of ranching alongside everything else. She understood numbers, understood what this opportunity meant. "You have to go. Come with me." Eleanor laughed. "With 2 babies, Cade? I'm serious." He turned in his chair, pulling her down onto his lap. Rose is old enough. Samuel's healthy. We could take the wagon, hire a wet nurse if needed. Martha's niece just had her baby and might need the work. His gray eyes searched hers. I don't want to be away from you for a month. Not after everything we've been through. Eleanor's heart warmed at his urgency, but practicality won out. Someone needs to stay and run the ranch. And you know, Rose gets fussy on long rides. It makes more sense for me to stay here with the children. Cade's jaw tightened. I don't like it. I know. Eleanor kissed him softly. But I'll be fine. Old Pete and Tommy will stay. Jose's wife can help with the children. We've survived worse than a few weeks apart. That's what worries me. Cade's arms tightened around her. Every time I think we're safe, something happens. Eleanor understood his fear. They'd had relative peace for years, but the West was still wild. Bandits, hostile natives, natural disasters, any number of things could go wrong. Then teach me more, she said firmly. I can shoot, but teach me to be better. Show me how to defend the ranch if I need to. Give me the tools. And I'll keep our home safe. Over the next week, Cade threw himself into preparing her. He showed her where he kept extra ammunition, how to reinforce the doors and windows, where the best defensive positions were if the ranch came under attack. He made her practice shooting until her shoulder ached, taught her to reload quickly, drilled her on what to do in various emergencies. You're scaring her, old Pete commented one evening, watching Eleanor practice draw and fire. I'm preparing her, Cade corrected, his voice tight. There's a difference. But Eleanor saw the truth in his eyes. He was terrified. The last time he'd left someone he loved unprotected, his sister had died. The fear of history repeating itself was eating him alive. The night before the drive, Eleanor found Cade in the barn, supposedly checking tack, but really just standing in the darkness, wrestling with his demons. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, pressing her cheek to his back. I'll be okay, she whispered. You can't promise that. His voice was raw. No, but I can promise I'll fight like hell to come back to you. Eleanor moved around to face him, taking his face in her hands. Cade, look at me. I'm not your sister. I'm not helpless anymore. You made sure of that. You taught me to be strong. I can't lose you. The confession tore out of him. Eleanor, I can't. You won't. She kissed him fiercely. I'm yours, remember? Completely yours. And I'm not going anywhere. So you take those cattle to Dodge City. You make that sale. And you come home to me. That's the plan. Nothing else. Cade's control broke. He pulled her against him, kissing her with desperate intensity, as if he could somehow protect her through sheer force of will. They made love in the hay that night, clinging to each other, whispering promises and prayers in the darkness. When dawn came, Cade held his children, memorizing their faces. He kissed Rose's forehead, whispered something in Samuel's tiny ear, then turned to Eleanor. 3 weeks, he said. 4 at most. If I'm not back in 30 days, you'll be back. Eleanor refused to entertain alternatives. Now go. The sooner you leave, the sooner you return. She stood on the porch, children in her arms, watching the dust cloud as Cade and the drovers pushed the herd north. Long after they disappeared from sight, she remained there, committing the moment to memory. Then she squared her shoulders, went inside, and got to work. She had a ranch to run. The first week passed smoothly. Eleanor fell into a rhythm. Mornings tending the children, days managing the remaining livestock and checking on the fields, evenings reviewing the account books by lamplight. Jose's wife, Maria, was a godsend, helping with cooking and childcare. Old Pete and Tommy handled the heavy labor, and Eleanor coordinated everything else. She discovered she was good at this, managing, planning, solving problems. Cade had always included her in decisions, but running things solo revealed capabilities she hadn't fully known she possessed. The second week brought the first test. A fence broke during a storm, and several horses got loose. Eleanor organized the search party, assigned areas to cover, and personally tracked down their prize stallion before he could get too far. She returned muddy and exhausted, but triumphant. "You're a natural, Señora," Jose said admiringly as they repaired the fence. "Il patrón will be proudo." Eleanor smiled, thinking of Cade. She missed him desperately, missed his laugh, his strength, the way he held her at night. But she was also discovering parts of herself she'd never known existed. The frightened woman who'd once been ready to trade her mother's locket for bread was gone. In her place was someone strong, capable, sure. The third week started with a visitor. Eleanor was in the garden with Rose when she heard hoofbeats approaching. She tensed automatically, her hand moving to the rifle she now kept close, but relaxed when she recognized the rider. "Mrs. Hendricks," Eleanor called, genuinely pleased. Martha Hendricks had become a true friend over the years, one of the few women in the territory who understood what it meant to build something from nothing. "Eleanor, dear." Martha dismounted with practiced ease. Despite being in her 50s, she was still spry. "I came to check on you. Heard Cade took the drive to Dodge." "He did. We're managing fine." Eleanor gestured toward the house. "Come in. I've got fresh bread." Over coffee, Martha shared news from town. Most of it was mundane. Who was courting whom? Which businesses were thriving? The usual gossip. But then her expression grew serious. "There's something you should know," Martha said carefully. "Dalton's back." Eleanor's blood went cold. "What?" "Rode into town 3 days ago. He's been drinking at the saloon, talking. Says he's got unfinished business." Martha reached across the table, gripping Eleanor's hand. "I don't think he knows Cade's gone yet, but when he finds out..." Eleanor's mind raced. Dalton? The man who tried to force her into marriage, who'd manufactured charges against her, who'd threatened everything she loved. He disappeared after resigning in disgrace, and she'd foolishly thought he was gone for good. "Does the new sheriff know?" Eleanor asked. "Sheriff Morrison's aware he's in town, but Dalton hasn't broken any laws yet. Can't arrest a man for drinking and talking." Martha's expression was grim. "But Eleanor, I've seen that look in the man's eyes before. He's working himself up to something." After Martha left, Eleanor called Pete and Tommy together. "I need you to be extra vigilant," she told them, explaining the situation. "Double the watch at night. If anyone approaches the ranch you don't recognize, get me immediately. And keep the rifles loaded." That night, Eleanor lay awake, listening to every sound, the rifle propped beside her bed. She thought about sending word to Cade, but what good would that do? He was at least a week away, maybe more. By the time he got her message and rode back, anything that was going to happen would already be over. No, she'd handle this herself. The confrontation came 2 days later, in the afternoon. Eleanor was teaching Rose her letters on the porch when she saw the dust cloud. 5 riders, moving with purpose, directly toward the ranch. Rose, inside, now. Go to Maria and stay with her and Samuel. Don't come out no matter what you hear. Eleanor kept her voice calm, but Rose, sensing danger, obeyed immediately. Eleanor checked her rifle, made sure her pistol was loaded, and stepped to the edge of the porch. Pete and Tommy appeared from the barn, armed and grim-faced. The riders stopped 50 yards out. Dalton sat in the center, older and harder than Eleanor remembered, his eyes blazing with old rage and new whiskey courage. The men with him were rough types, drifters and hired guns. "Eleanor Walsh," Dalton called. "Or should I say Eleanor Morrow? Though I hear your husband's away." "Convenient. It's Mrs. Morrow," Eleanor corrected, her voice steady. "And you're trespassing, Mr. Dalton. Turn around and ride out." "Not until we settle accounts." Dalton walked his horse closer. "You owe me. Years of humiliation, losing my position, all because of you. All because of your own actions." Eleanor didn't lower her rifle. "You broke the law. You paid the price. That's justice, not a debt. I call it differently." Dalton's smile was ugly. "See, I've been thinking. Your husband took something from me, so I'm gonna take something from him. Seems fair." Eleanor's finger tightened on the trigger. "You take one more step toward this house, and I'll put a bullet in you. That's not a threat, it's a promise." "You really think you can shoot all 5 of us before we reach you?" Dalton laughed, but there was an edge of uncertainty in his voice. "You're one woman with 2 old men backing you. We're 5 armed men. She's not just one woman." The new voice came from behind Dalton's group. Eleanor's heart soared as she recognized the writer, Jefferson Hayes, the lawyer who'd helped free her years ago. And he wasn't alone. Behind him rode Sheriff Morrison and 6 deputized citizens, all armed. "Mr. Dalton," Hayes said pleasantly, "I represent Mrs. Eleanor Morrow. You are currently engaged in criminal trespass with clear intent to harm. You have 2 options. Leave now, or be arrested for attempted assault, terroristic threatening, and whatever other charges I can think of on the way to jail." Dalton's face purpled. "This is between me and her." "No," Sheriff Morrison interjected, his hand on his gun. "This is between you and the law. And the law says you ride out now or you swing. Your choice." For a long moment, the tension held, knife edge sharp. Then one of Dalton's men spoke up. "I didn't sign on for fighting half the town. I'm out." He turned his horse and rode away. Another followed, then a third, until Dalton sat alone, rage and defeat warring in his expression. "This isn't over," he spat. "Yes," Eleanor said clearly, "it is. You come near me or my family again, and I won't wait for the law. I'll kill you myself, and unlike 6 years ago, I won't hesitate. I've got too much to protect now, and you're not worth the risk of mercy." Something in her voice, cold, certain, absolutely serious, made Dalton flinch. He yanked his horse around and spurred away, disappearing in a cloud of dust. Eleanor's legs went weak, but she didn't lower her rifle until he was completely out of sight. Then Hayes dismounted and approached the porch, tipping his hat. "Mrs. Hendricks sent word you might need assistance," he explained. "Good thing she did. Thank you." Eleanor's voice shook slightly, adrenaline finally catching up. "I'm grateful you came. Cade Morrow's a good man. His wife is clearly a formidable woman." Hayes smiled. "I suspect Dalton finally learned what the rest of us already knew. You don't mess with the Morrows." After the men left, Eleanor sat on the porch steps, suddenly exhausted. Pete lowered himself down beside her with a grunt. "You did good, Eleanor," he said gruffly. "Real good. Boss'll be proud." "I was terrified," Eleanor admitted. "Courage ain't about not being scared. It's about doing what needs doing anyway. Pete patted her shoulder awkwardly. You're strong. Always have been. Just took you a while to see it. That night, Eleanor wrote Cade a letter she'd never send, pouring out everything that had happened, everything she'd felt. She sealed it and tucked it away, a record for herself of the moment she'd truly become who she was meant to be. Not Cade's rescued victim, not a woman who needed protection, but Eleanor Morrow, wife, mother, rancher, survivor. When Cade returned a week later, trail dusty and exhausted, but grinning with the success of the sale, Eleanor ran to meet him. He swept her into his arms, kissing her thoroughly while the ranch hands cheered. I missed you, he said against her mouth. Every damn day. I missed you too. Eleanor pulled back, studying his face. But Cade, I have to tell you something. Dalton came. His expression went thunderous. What? I handled it, Eleanor said quickly, with help from Hayes and the sheriff. But Cade, I handled it. I protected our home. I protected our children. I did what needed doing. Cade stared at her for a long moment, a dozen emotions crossing his face. Then he kissed her again, fierce and proud. Of course you did. You're Eleanor Morrow. You're the strongest person I know. That night, after the children were asleep, Eleanor told him everything. Cade listened, his jaw tight, his hands clenched. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. I should have been here, he finally said. Maybe, but I'm glad I had to do it myself. Eleanor took his hands. Cade, I needed to know I could survive without you. Not because I want to, but because I needed to prove to myself that I'm whole, that I'm strong enough to stand alone. You've always been strong enough. I know that now. Eleanor smiled. Because when it mattered, I didn't break. I bent. I was terrified, but I didn't break. And that's what you've given me. Not just protection, but the confidence to protect myself. Cade pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I love you so damn much. I know. Eleanor held him tight. I love you too. Now come to bed. We have a lot of time to make up for. Later, wrapped in each other's arms, Cade murmured, no more cattle drives that take me away for weeks. I don't care how good the money is. Eleanor laughed softly. We'll figure it out together, like everything else. Together, Cade agreed, and kissed her until she forgot about everything except him. The winter that followed was one of the harshest anyone could remember. Snow piled 6 feet deep in places, and the temperatures dropped so low that water froze in the house overnight. But the Morrow Ranch was prepared. Cade had learned from his years in the territory, and they had supplies and fuel to last until spring. What they weren't prepared for was the knock on the door during the worst blizzard of the season. Cade opened it to find a woman collapsed on the porch, half frozen and clutching a bundle to her chest. Without hesitation, he carried her inside, calling for Eleanor. Get blankets, hot water, anything warm, he ordered, laying the woman on the couch. She was young, maybe 20, with dark hair and skin pale from cold. The bundle she held so protectively turned out to be a baby, miraculously still alive. Eleanor took charge immediately, stripping the wet clothes, wrapping both mother and child in warm blankets, coaxing hot broth into them. It took 2 hours before the woman could speak coherently. Thank you, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Thank you for not turning us away. What's your name? Eleanor asked gently, sitting beside her. What happened? Rebecca. Rebecca Grant. The woman looked down at her baby, a little girl, perhaps 3 months old. We were traveling to California with a wagon train. Husband died of fever 2 weeks ago. Trainmaster said I was bad luck, slowing them down. Abandoned us at a trading post 50 miles back. Her voice broke. I've been walking ever since, trying to find help. I thought we were going to die out there. Eleanor's heart clenched. She looked at Cade and saw her own thoughts reflected in his eyes. This could have been her years ago, desperate, alone, at the mercy of strangers. You're safe now, Cade said firmly. Stay as long as you need. Over the next few weeks, Rebecca recovered her strength. She was quiet and grateful, helping Eleanor with chores, despite Eleanor's protests that she should rest. The baby, named Grace, thrived with regular food and warmth. Rose was delighted to have another child in the house, even if Grace was too young to play. But as Rebecca healed physically, her emotional state became clearer. She was terrified of the future, of being alone, of what would happen when spring came and she had nowhere to go. One evening, after the children were in bed, Rebecca finally broke down. I don't know what to do, she sobbed, sitting at the kitchen table with Eleanor. I have no money, no family, no skills beyond basic housework. How am I supposed to survive? How do I protect Grace? Eleanor recognized that fear. She'd lived it. You start by giving yourself time to grieve and heal. Then you figure out the next step. You don't have to have everything planned out today. But I can't stay here forever. You've already done so much. You can stay as long as you need, Eleanor interrupted. Rebecca, I was where you are once. Desperate, scared, certain I had no future. Someone gave me a chance when I needed it most. I'm just paying that forward. Rebecca looked up, hope and disbelief warring in her expression. You were? So Eleanor told her story, all of it. The abuse, the fear, the desperate flight, meeting Cade, learning to be strong, building a life from nothing. She left nothing out, and by the end, Rebecca was crying again. But these were different tears. You understand, she whispered. You really understand. I do. Eleanor squeezed her hand. And I'm telling you, it gets better. You're stronger than you think. You survived abandonment in a blizzard with a baby. That takes incredible strength. I was so scared. Fear doesn't make you weak. What you do despite the fear, that's what matters. After that conversation, Rebecca began to change. She stood straighter, spoke with more confidence, started planning. She learned to cook better under Eleanor's guidance, studied the account books to understand numbers, asked questions about ranching and business. I want to be independent, she explained to Eleanor one afternoon while they baked bread. Like you, I want to know I can take care of Grace no matter what. Then we'll teach you, Eleanor said simply. Cade and I will teach you everything we know. When spring finally came, melting the snow and revealing the greening land beneath, Rebecca made her decision. I want to work, she told Cade and Eleanor over dinner. Really work, not just housekeeping. I want to learn the ranch business. I want to earn my place. Cade studied her for a moment, then nodded. All right, we could use another hand. Jose's getting older, and we've been talking about expanding. You're hired. Fair wages, room and board, and we'll teach you everything. Rebecca's face lit up with the first genuine smile Eleanor had seen from her. Thank you. I won't let you down. She didn't. Rebecca threw herself into learning with fierce determination. She learned to rope, to brand, to recognize sick cattle, to manage supplies. She made mistakes, but she learned from them. And slowly, over the course of that spring and summer, she transformed from a terrified victim into a confident, capable woman. One evening in late summer, Eleanor found Rebecca on the porch, holding Grace and looking out over the ranch with an expression of peace. "You're thinking about leaving," Eleanor said quietly, sitting beside her. Rebecca nodded. "Not because I'm unhappy here. You've given me everything: safety, family, purpose. But I think I'm ready to try standing alone. There's a small ranch for sale near Silver City. The owner died, no heirs. It's small, manageable. I've been saving my wages, and I think I can make the down payment." Eleanor felt pride and sadness mixing. "You'll do well. You're ready. Because of you." Rebecca turned to her, eyes shining. "Eleanor, you showed me what was possible. You didn't just save my life. You showed me how to live it, how to be strong, how to not let fear win." "You did that yourself," Eleanor corrected. "I just reminded you who you were." When Rebecca left 3 weeks later, driving a wagon loaded with supplies gifted by Cade and Eleanor, the goodbye was tearful but joyful. Grace waved from her mother's lap, and Rebecca looked back one last time at the ranch that had saved her. "You'll visit," Eleanor called. "Often," Rebecca promised. "And when Grace is old enough, I'll tell her about the people who showed us what kindness really means." After they disappeared down the road, Cade wrapped his arms around Eleanor from behind. "You know, we just lost our best ranch hand." Eleanor laughed. "We gained something better, proof that second chances work, that broken people can heal and become whole. Speaking of which," Cade turned her to face him, "I've been thinking. We have room. We have resources. What if we did this more often?" "Did what?" "Helped people who need it. Not charity, real help. Work and training and a chance to rebuild." Cade's eyes were bright with the idea. "We know what it's like to need that chance. What if we made it part of what this ranch is about?" Eleanor looked at the land around them, the home they'd built together, the life they'd created from desperation and hope. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I think that's exactly what we should do." Over the next several years, the Morrow Ranch became known as a place of second chances. They hired men and women who'd hit hard times, taught them skills, gave them dignity and purpose. Some stayed, becoming permanent members of the ranch family. Others moved on, taking their newfound strength to build their own lives. And through it all, Eleanor and Cade's love deepened, tested and proved by every challenge, every success, every person they helped heal. "Still feel like you'll break?" Cade teased one evening, watching Eleanor manage 3 ranch hands, 2 children, and a new arrival who'd shown up that afternoon, a young man running from an abusive father. Eleanor looked at everything they'd built, the family, the ranch, the community of healing they'd created. "No," she said, smiling at her husband. "I learned that breaking isn't the end. It's just the beginning of something stronger." Cade pulled her close and kissed her. "That's my girl." "Always," Eleanor whispered against his lips. "Always yours." The telegram came on an ordinary Thursday in autumn, 10 years after Eleanor had first arrived at Morrow Ranch. Rose was now 13, Samuel 10, and their youngest, a daughter named Hope, was 5. The ranch had prospered beyond anything they'd imagined, and Eleanor was known throughout the territory as much for her business acumen as for her compassionate hiring practices. Tommy brought the telegram to Eleanor in the office where she was reviewing the quarterly accounts. "Just came from town, Mrs. Morrow." Eleanor opened it, expecting news about a cattle sale or supply shipment. Instead, her hands began to shake as she read, "Regret to inform. Martha Hendricks, gravely ill. Stop. Asking for you, stop. Come quick, stop. Martha, her friend, her mentor, the woman who'd warned her about Dalton and stood by her through everything. Eleanor was on her feet immediately. Tommy, have someone saddle Sage. I need to get to town. She was already moving toward the door when Cade appeared, back from checking fence lines. Eleanor, what's wrong? She showed him the telegram. His expression softened immediately. I'll go with you. The children, Maria can watch them. Eleanor, you don't have to do this alone. Cade took her hand. Together, remember? They rode hard, reaching town in record time. Martha's house was quiet, filled with that heavy feeling that precedes loss. Martha's niece, Sarah, met them at the door with red-rimmed eyes. She's been asking for you, Sarah whispered. Doctor says it's her heart. Could be today, could be a week, but she wanted to see you. Eleanor entered the bedroom with her own heart hammering. Martha lay propped on pillows, thinner and paler than Eleanor had ever seen her, but her eyes were still sharp and alert. Eleanor, dear. Martha's voice was weak but warm. You came. Of course I came. Eleanor sat beside the bed, taking Martha's frail hand. You should have sent for me sooner. Didn't want to worry you over nothing, but I suppose it's something after all. Martha smiled slightly. I'm dying, Eleanor. Don't look so stricken. I'm 83 years old. I've had a good run. Don't talk like that. Hush, child, and listen. I don't have the energy for arguments. Martha squeezed her hand with surprising strength. I need to tell you something. About why I helped you that day when Dalton had you arrested. Eleanor waited, confused. She'd always assumed Martha had helped out of simple human decency. I had a daughter once, Martha said softly. Sarah's mother, my Annie. She married young, to a man who seemed respectable. Turned out he was cruel. Beat her, controlled her. She tried to leave him twice, and twice the law sent her back, said a wife belonged with her husband. Martha's eyes filled with tears. The third time she tried to run, he killed her. Made it look like an accident, and no one questioned it because he was a prominent citizen. Eleanor's throat tightened. Martha, I'm so sorry. I vowed then that I'd never stand by again. That if I ever saw another woman being controlled, being forced, I'd fight for her the way I couldn't fight for Annie. Martha looked directly at Eleanor. When I heard what Dalton was doing to you, I saw my daughter all over again. And I thought, not this time. This time, I'll do something. You saved my life, Eleanor whispered. You and Cade and Jefferson, you all saved my life. No, dear. You saved yourself. You were the one who stood up, who refused to be broken. We just gave you the tools. Martha's breathing was labored now. But that's not why I wanted to see you. I wanted to ask you something. A favor. Anything. Take care of Sarah. She's a good girl, but she's alone now. Her husband died last year. No children. She'll have this house, but she needs what you found. Purpose. Family. But place to belong. Martha's grip tightened. Will you give her that chance, the way I helped give it to you? Eleanor didn't hesitate. Of course, she'll always have a place with us, if she wants it. Thank you. Eyes drifted closed. I can rest now, knowing the chain continues. You save others the way we saved you, and they'll save others in turn. That's how we change things, Eleanor, one life at a time. Martha Hendricks died that evening, peacefully, with Eleanor holding her hand and Cade standing silent vigil in the corner. At the funeral 3 days later, it seemed the entire territory turned out to honor her, a testament to how many lives she'd touched. Eleanor stood at the graveside, watching them lower the casket, and felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Martha had passed her the torch. Now it was Eleanor's turn to be the one who helped others find their strength. Sarah did come to the ranch, grieving and lost. Eleanor gave her time, space, and eventually, purpose. She became the ranch schoolteacher, educating not just the Moro children, but the children of all the ranch hands and workers. She brought books and learning and culture to their isolated corner of the world. And she flourished, finding her own path, her own strength, just like Eleanor had, just like Rebecca had, just like all the others who'd passed through Moro Ranch over the years. One evening, a year after Martha's death, Eleanor sat on the porch with Cade, watching Sarah teach Rose and Samuel on the lawn while Hope chased butterflies. She would be proud, Cade said quietly. Martha, she'd be proud of what you've done. What we've done, Eleanor corrected. None of this works without you, Cade. Without us. He pulled her close. Do you ever miss it? The quiet? Before we turned this place into a refuge for half the territory? Eleanor thought about it. Their life was certainly busier now, more complicated. The ranch housed not just their family, but several others. People learning trades, recovering from trauma, building new lives. It was loud and chaotic and demanding. No, she said finally. This is what we're meant to do. Save people the way we were saved. Pass on the gift we were given. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Eleanor looked up at him. Cade, that day you found me in town, ready to trade my mother's locket for bread, you didn't just save me. You showed me what was possible. You showed me that broken things could be made whole, that scared people could become strong, that love was real and not just something from stories. She touched his face. How could I not share that with others? Cade kissed her softly. I love you. Still. Always. Still, Eleanor echoed. Always. As the sun set over Morrow Ranch, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Eleanor felt a deep sense of peace. Her life hadn't been easy. She'd been broken, terrified, certain she had no future. But she'd survived, more than survived. She'd thrived. And now she spent her days making sure others had that same chance. Mama! Hope came running up the porch steps, her hands full of wildflowers. Look what I found! Eleanor pulled her youngest daughter onto her lap, breathing in the smell of sunshine and childhood. They're beautiful, sweetheart. Can we put them on Miss Martha's grave tomorrow? Hope asked. So she knows we remember? Eleanor's eyes stung with tears, but she smiled. Yes, that's a perfect idea. Cade's arm came around both of them, and they sat there together, husband, wife, daughter, watching the day fade into night. The ranch hands were finishing their work. Sarah was gathering books, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed peacefully. Home. This was home. Built from desperation, cemented with love, expanded through compassion. The Morrow Ranch wasn't just a place, it was a promise. A promise that second chances were real, that broken people could heal, that love could conquer even the hardest circumstances. Eleanor Morrow had learned to be strong, and now she spent her life teaching others to do the same. You know what I think? Cade said suddenly. What? I think you should write it all down. Your story, Martha's story, Rebecca's, all of them, so people know what's possible. Eleanor considered it. Maybe I will. Someday. when we're old and gray and sitting on this porch with grandchildren. We'll have a lot of stories to tell by then. We already do. Eleanor leaned into him. But I'm not done living them yet. Are you? Cade laughed. Not even close. I figure we've got at least another 40 years of breaking and healing and saving the world, one person at a time. Sounds perfect, Eleanor said, and it was. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Eleanor and Cade's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.